Hi guys, this is Ruthie with the Popo Backyard Farm, and I wanted to share with you about apples. I have beautiful apple orchards all around us. We live in Wayne County, New York, and it's like the second top grower of apples in the U.S. And so, I wanted to kind of share with you guys about apples because you guys may or may not know all this. Now, on Labor Day this year was the first that we saw the workers taking down all the apples. Now what's going to happen is this. These apples are all going to be picked and they will be brought into the various factories. They will be sorted. They come in pallets. I worked at an apple factory when I first got here. Oh, I think the first year Clay and I were married. Um, there's not a whole lot of work out this way. So there was a job at the local apple factory, and I'd never worked at a factory, and so I said, well, let's give it a try. And actually, it was a lot of fun. But this is what happens. The apples all come in pallets. They're in, boxes. They get dumped into a big vat to get cleaned, and then the sorters will sort through it. And fortunately for me, when I got hired, I said I wanted to do everything. So I got to do all the different jobs. So what I did was, the first thing that happens is all your apples will get sorted. And so they'll actually look through the apples, and there might be a board or a plank. So the sorters might be pulling out rotten apples. There might even come in like like a soda can, or just about anything, mouse, anything that somehow got thrown into those pallets. And so they all get sorted. Then there's a big machine after that first process that they all go and get sorted by size: large, medium, small. Then what happens is they go through another washing, to take off any extra stuff off them. And, they kind of like give continuous washes, one right after another. And then they go through a wax machine to wax them. And then they have sorters all along these lines too. Now, one set of sorters will be like the place that I worked. They had one set of sorters for like the bigger apples that go overseas and things like that. And then another set of sorters that would be more for local, but they also sort both aspects. But we'll talk about the one line that goes overseas. On that end of the factory, where it's all in like one big room. It's not a huge factory, and they've got a lot of these little factories around, which the apple growers, the owner of the factory, will have a bunch of different apple growers that bring their apples. There'll be all the local farms that are around here, and there's, like I said, there's a lot of these little factories. And then they'll all sort through the apples. A lot of them, the apples that come in, a lot of the workers are migrant workers and different type of people. So when I worked there, it was interesting because, like, a lot of people spoke Mexican Spanish. I'm sorry, excuse me for that. They were Mexican people that spoke Spanish. A lot of the people there at this particular factory I worked at, and we had we would when I worked on that line, we would sort through all the apples, and then they had to be perfect. I mean, there couldn't be one blemish on them, because if there was, it couldn't take the boat, being 6 weeks or whatever in a crate on the boat. And so everything would have to be perfect. What wasn't perfect got thrown into big pails, and then they would be shipped off to companies like where my husband works, where they make applesauce and juice and stuff like that. So all the bad apples would go there. Not necessarily bad, but maybe if they just had like a little ding, like if they had a certain kind of a spot. I mean, they had like, and basically they couldn't even have like a sunspot on them. So then those would go to the place to make juice and stuff. I mean, no rotten apples at all were coming through at that point, because they all had been pulled. And then after that, they would go into, the inspectors would come in. They would all have to be inspected by the government. They'd come in, and it was real strict, and everything just couldn't leave the factory. They checked everything. And then on the other line, they had people that were, the apples would come through, and those apples would be put into bags, which the first apples were all put in the boxes and such. Then the next apples were all put in the bags, so they would have people that were sorting through those apples as well. And they would, you know, stop the line every once in a while and say next thing coming through. So a lot, you know, they hand-picked. Every single apple was hand-picked, inspected, and after, like, they may have 20 people going through these lines, and each person's picking and sorting through the apples, and then they would get bagged up, boxed, and as they're working on them, it was really funny. Like, the same exact apples might be a name brand, then it might just be Uncle Joe's or Happy Apples. I mean, they were all the same apples. And people are paying for name brands because they didn't know any better, because they didn't know they were all the same apples. And so that was pretty interesting. And then after that happened, you know, like I said, they'd be boxed and everything. And I helped make the boxes. They had boxes and stuff like that. But I guess that experience taught me that the apples that you get and the fruit that you get and the food that you get is really, really good. Now, the other thing I want to share with you guys is the apples that we're picking now, and it's like the first week of September, they have to last till the next harvest. So if you're buying apples at this time of the year, you're getting fresh apples. If you're buying apples, say, in June, those apples have been in storage all year long from the beginning of September, and they stay there until, you know, the next apples come and are harvested. You know what I'm saying. So that's pretty much what happens with all your fruits and vegetables. You know, it's just the factories, the local companies work on them and things like that. You know, and it's really, really safe, really sanitary, really picky, so picky that when I first started working there, I'm thinking, how can you even ship any apples out? I mean, they're so picky. I mean, you would see a perfect apple with no blemishes, and they would say the stem doesn't look right. And I mean, everything has to be perfect. And the apples that aren't perfect all get boxed up, and they get nothing rotten or anything like that. Rotten apples go right in the trash. But we're talking, like, if they have a little mark on them, they get made into applesauce, apple juice, and that type of thing. So I hope you enjoyed a little bit of education about how the apples are grown. They say that, and I mentioned this before in another video, that the migrant workers feed America. I mean, we have migrant workers that come into our area from all over the country, all over the world, so to speak. Well, Mexico, Jamaica, and different places. I shouldn't say all over the world, but, you know, they come and they help with the harvest. Some stay all year long, and then some are on visas and stuff and go back and forth to their country. But, you know, it's nice because it is a really, there's a big cultural difference around my area. We also have lots of, we have like Fairhaven and resort areas, so we also have people that come that spend the summer and then they leave too. And then through the winter now, we're just going to be like the skeleton people that stay in our area that live here all the time. And the migrant workers are going home, the vacationers are going home, and now it's just us. And I mentioned this, I said before, if you that have been watching us for a long time, like, a lot of people around here set up little farm stands and stuff because we have people that come and spend time in our area and then they leave, and then they don't come back till the next season. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned a little bit more, like I said, about the fruits and the vegetables. And like, subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video. God bless.